Welcome to Bamford Rose and another classified chat. This week it's Halo cars, and we're going to start with DBS and run into Vanquish 6-speed and Vanquish 8-speed. So if you're looking at a DBS, and maybe one of the early ones, then a starting price for a coupe auto is probably going to be around the 70k bracket. I've selected one from franchise dealer here with 25,000 miles, nice black on black interior exterior, Bang & Olufsen stereo, contrasting red stitching. I'm sure you will agree this looks a beautiful car. Perhaps you can find some cheaper alternatives out there, but for much cheaper than 70, then the mileage starts to go really high, and in that case you'd want to check if it's had a new set of carbon ceramic brakes or other consumables, tyres, suspension wishbone arms, all that sort of stuff has been recently renewed. If the mileage of the DBS was upwards of 40-50k, then I'd certainly be looking for those receipts, and without them be very cautious. That's why I start my search here at 70k with a low mileage example with all the trimmings that you'll get from a purchase from franchise dealer. With anything north of 20k miles on the clock, then you really want to be checking the paint condition carefully. The Astons suffer from stone rash quite badly, so front bumper, front wings beneath the headlamp, lower quarter of the bonnet, rear of the sills, and then up the rear quarter. I want to be checking that there's no unsightly stone rashing. Just be careful of the classic trick as well of someone peeling off all the protective tape that was in those areas. The protective tape does its job, but as it ages it gets duffed up a little bit. And a classic used car salesman trick is to rip off all the tape and make the paint look fresh. Obviously used car salesmen don't want anything to come off their bottom line. They're not going to renew the tape, so drive in that car without any tape on it and you'll compromise the paint condition really quickly. Next we move on to a DBS manual. Obviously the manual is going to command a premium. A DBS manual is a really exciting, engaging sports car drive. That's not to take anything away from the auto, because the auto does drive very well. But a 6-litre V12 engine north of 500 bhp with a stick shift, and that's something else. This example here is from a private seller, and without any of the after sales care that you get from a purchase from a trader, then 78k I think is a bit much. And I think as well the mileage is a touch high for 78k. The cars can handle that sort of mileage and more than double that without any problem at all given regular servicing. It's just that the purchasing market favours lower mileage and considers higher mileage undesirable. And if you were to buy this car at 37k, then even if you were keeping it for say 3 years before selling it on, you're going to do maybe 2,000 miles per year, then the next buyer is going to be seeing that they'll cross that psychological threshold of 50k quite soon. So that's why a car that's going to get close to that psychological threshold in your ownership just prior to you selling that car is a consideration at point of purchase now. If you're going to keep the car for a long time and it didn't matter if it went over that threshold, then it doesn't really matter. As I say, these cars can handle the mileage no problems. Obviously there's the usual pitfalls when buying private, and that should really come with a discount over trade. And even though this car is a manual, it doesn't really give that discount in my opinion, but no doubt worthy of a view and maybe a barter. Next car is a 2011 DBS Coupe Auto, very low mileage, and this is now starting to creep towards the upper bracket of DBS money before you can switch over to the next Halo car, which will be a 6-speed Vanquish. Obviously this car is going for high money because of the very low miles. It's a carbon black special edition that was mainly a paint and stitching activity. Engine performance, braking, handling were all the same across all DBS. So this car is all good. Only comments on this one is that it is high-end money for a DBS, and for that high-end money You'd really want the after sales care that a franchise dealer could offer. I'm not sure exactly what this company's after sales care would be like. Might be doing them in injustice, but it doesn't look the most luxurious of settings to picture a 95k car. Continuing on to the upper end of DBS, we've got another manual. For some reason, this one is priced ridiculously far too high at 100k. For 40,000 mile on the clock and not coming from a franchise dealer, then this car is way overpriced. Nonetheless, it's a very nice car, but I'd have put this car at 80, 85k. So at the moment, that sort of shows the price range for DBS. Sort of 70k for a good one. As I've said, you can pick up cheaper ones, but then you'll compromise something on a cheaper purchase price. And drifting off all the way up to later, very low mileage cars around the 100k territory. We've now got an interesting question, which is the DBS was Aston's halo car for a few years, and then Vanquish was released in 2013. So here we show an entry-level Vanquish, 25,000 miles on the clock, which is low, up for £70,000. So this is the big question. Which halo car do you get for your £70,000? Is it a DBS or is it a new Vanquish? Both cars are carbon ceramic brakes. DBS has 510 bhp, whereas the new Vanquish was 565. New Vanquish has launch control, better sports mode. The Vanquish will feel a newer car to drive. The DBS is appreciating, whereas the Vanquish is perhaps still depreciating, and maybe at one point will appreciate when the whole world realises that 6-litre naturally aspirated engines are a thing of the past. I think you get more of an analogue Aurora sports car feel in the DBS, especially the DBS manual. But the Vanquish is a mighty fine looking car, and it's a serious first world problem of what to do with your 70k. Is it DBS? Is it 6-speed Vanquish? This is a beautiful Vanquish from franchise dealer, so for an extra 3k and with lower mileage, you're going to get better after sales care, and no doubt will take some serious thought of turning down this Vanquish over a DBS. There are many Vanquish on the market upwards of 70k until you reach the 2016 model 8-speed Vanquish. As you'll probably remember from a previous video, we argued that the Vanquish didn't need its 8 speeds, but because the market favours the newer car, the 6-speed could be had at a much cheaper price. So this is about entry-level 8-speed Vanquish at 95k, and whilst it's a cracking car, there's a lot to be said for spending 25k less and getting more or less the same. You know, super low mileage, 15,000. I sort of don't get the specialness of this centenary model. It might have worked to sell the car to the new buyer, but now a few years later, and especially with all the special edition models the factory have done, the many Zagatos, the Bonds, so many special editions that this one sort of pales into insignificance for me. It's the outgoing 6-speed, yet it's up at 100k. I wouldn't be picking this 6-speed over a cheaper 8-speed. So it's in the price threshold for 6-speed, it's in the price threshold for 8-speed. We now get up to S, and I've picked out a good one at 125k. 19,000 miles, beautiful interior. I suppose the exterior accents are okay. It's a little bit too shouty for me, but nonetheless, it's a very nice car. At 125k, for sure, this car will depreciate, but it's 19,000 mile and you'll be buying the car to put some miles on it and use it, and the depreciation will be the cost of that use, which in the grand scheme of how cars operate, that's fair enough. It's just moving on to this car is where I think the buyer will lose out and the depreciation will turn out into a fair sum. Obviously at 3,900 miles this car is going to be practically new, But at 160k in 1 year or 2 years time, and when the car has got, say, 15,000, 20,000 mile on the clock, what will be its resale value then? I'd bet it would be down at 100, 120. Whereas if you bought a Vanquish at the 80, 90, 100k mark, considering the models that are beneath Vanquish, I can't see them depreciating ever below 60, 65. Again, as is the same with the entire Aston range, there's some good crossovers to consider. This 2011 DBS at 70k is an absolute cracking car, and it would be a real consideration, if it were me, thinking about any DB 9.2, whether you'd be better off buying this DBS. Also, if you're in the market for a DB11, which are now sub 100k, arguably this Vanquish Coupe represents a better purchase. There's no right or wrong, and it would be interesting to understand why some buyers would favour a particular car over another. Perhaps I'm a little biased because I favour this analog Generation 1 Gaydon era car over the newer Mercedes contemporary style cars. I hope you like that roundup of the DBS and Vanquish Halo cars that are available on the market, and join us in a couple of weeks for our next classified chat. As ever, it really helps us if you can like, comment and subscribe.